live from my basement, everybody. Hi. Thanks for joining us. I'm Patrick Fingston. I write a little newsletter called The Illinoize, which you can get at theillinoize.com, ILLINOIZE. We are trying this for the first time and wanted to talk about things that are happening and important in the state right now, and do it in a way that it kind of fits in over the lunch hour and is an opportunity that we can talk about serious things and important things in a way that isn't so confrontational, isn't so mean, isn't so partisan, but is also tough and fair all at the same time. Today we're going to talk about guns for the majority of our conversation, but also abortion, since the legislature is going to be moving in that direction as well over the next few weeks and months. We'll also talk a little bit more on the political side of things with Rick Pearson of the Chicago Tribune here in a little bit. But first, we're going to welcome in State Representative Bob Morgan, who is a Democrat from Deerfield. Bob represents Highland Park and the community that was ravaged by a shooter on July 4th. You represent it now, you represent it in the new map, so it's still a part of your life, Bob. And first of all, you and I talked shortly after, and we're glad you and all of your team and family were safe. Where were you, and what did you see and hear, and how did it happen for you on July 4th?
Thanks, Patrick. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on. I do represent Highland Park, the 58th District, and I was at the Highland Park Parade with my wife and kids and family and friends, as so many elected officials do, waiting to march in a parade. I was just given the green light to start marching, and we'd just taken some photos. We have some photos. The shooting took place at 10:14. We have 10, 12, 13, and 14 photos that we took with people, and we were given the indication to start marching. At that moment, my campaign manager was standing in front of me on the phone with somebody else who was going to be joining us, and turned towards me and yelled, "Gunshot, gunshot," and had a look in her face where it was pretty instantaneous. It was a real, it wasn't a drill, that was a real shooting. And immediately over her shoulder, I saw hundreds of people running away from the parade, and also almost towards the same intersection, an unmarked squad car flying up the road with its lights flashing. And so that was the moment we knew there had been a shooting. We heard very faint, sounded like faint fireworks in the distance, but there was just a lot of noise, so we didn't really hear much. We weren't sure what we were hearing, and turned to get my wife and kids and our staff and volunteers all to the train station building, which is a couple hundred feet away, to make sure they were safe. And then I ran to the scene to see how I could help.
That's terrifying, first of all, and obviously we've seen the stories, and we've seen the scary situation about folks that have been families that were torn apart, and specifically there was a young child who lost both of his parents as part of this, and it's terrifying to know that it's real, and it happens in our communities, and even in Illinois where we do have stricter than normal gun laws. So I think that leads us into the policy part of here, and obviously I think guns and abortion, some of the things that are hot topics right now, are very personal and emotional issues for people, and I think you and I, with our backgrounds, we're going to probably not see everything eye to eye, and that's fine, because we're grown-ups and we can do that. But I wonder, specifically just in a broad sense from you, this young person, I'm not going to call him a man because he's a coward. He acquired these firearms legally. He passed a background check. He had a legal FOID card. and much has been made about the issue of his dad signing off on that because he was under 21, even though he probably shouldn't have. Is this an issue, Bob, for is the law enough for what's happening and what you saw that day?
We're certainly not doing enough. And that can take a number of forms, right? So in 3 days after the Highland Park shooting, within 3 days, we had more gun violence deaths in other parts of the state than we did in Highland Park. Just 3 days. So every day there are new shootings and more people whose lives are torn apart by it. So the idea that this was a one-off, that this won't happen again or can't happen again, and also the idea that we can't do anything about it, that's not my nature. I also think that the evidence suggests there's a lot of reasons to think there are things we can do on this issue. And there's not just one thing. There are a lot of one things that might have stopped this particular shooting in Highland Park. But overall, there are a lot of things that we can do to make sure no other town has this. So I don't think this is just a permanent fixture of our lives. I don't think it can be. I don't think that's sustainable. And I think it's our job to figure out what we can change to make sure it doesn't happen.
And the difference here seems to be, obviously with the violence each week, and weekend that we hear about, and it's not just Chicago, even though a lot of downstaters like to say, oh, it's just all this violence on the South Side. It's not. It's Champaign, it's Rockford, it's Peoria and Springfield and the East St. Louis Metro East area too. Those are essentially handgun crimes committed by people who have those guns illegally. So I think we can see that these are two different discussions, which of course you were named this week to a working group in the House that's going to address the ideas of whether it's assault weapon bans or other gun legislation. So we can touch on the handgun part of this if we have time before we go. But let's talk specifically about assault weapons. There is or what's considered an assault weapon. Obviously, the AR-15 style, the Armalite style rifle that this person used was, I think you can probably consider anything shooting a 5.56 round as an assault rifle. This gun, which I don't think enough has been made. It's a Smith & Wesson M&P, which actually stands for military and police. So I think, you can have the question as to whether those are civilian guns anyway. But the idea that assault weapons themselves are the problem, I guess, is one, is a ban the right path? Because even though these mass shootings that do happen are often perpetrated, with these style weapons, it's often someone who has it illegally anyway. So does it really make a difference to ban assault rifles outright?
I think part of the answer is the fact that in less than a minute, this individual shot 83 rounds into the parade. Right there, you can hear the sounds and you hear the rapid fire, single compression firing, and then it stops because he had to reload and he went to another 30 mag. And I think there's no dispute that had it been a handgun, there would have been fewer deaths. In the same way that had it been a fully automatic weapon, there would have been more deaths. So I think at least part of the conversation has to be, what kind of weapons are there available for anyone and everyone that are making it easier to kill a lot of people? And
so,
to your point, I don't know that a ban is the only thing. And in fact, I don't think it is. I think we have a lot of things we have to look at. And you mentioned a number of them. But I also think that we have to have an honest conversation about that, much like we did with bump stocks. And we decided that made it into a fully automatic weapon that we decided as society, policy-wise, and almost bipartisan way, that just had to end.
And
right?
that was everyone from liberals to Paul Ryan to Trump himself
Right,
that were for the, especially after the Las Vegas shooting that
right.
happened. The question I think for me, I think, on when you see an assault weapon ban, it's been held up by the courts in a few places. It's been thrown out by the courts in a few places. How do you as a a progressive, whether you want to call it pro-gun, anti-gun, you know, relatively agnostic on guns, if it weren't for the Highland Park situation, how do you get around that Second Amendment issue? Because I think it's safe to say the Constitution is the Constitution, and that's what you sort of uphold and protect, and so did your colleagues.
Right. Well, and again, you and I, we just talked about the fact that we have a prohibition on fully automatic weapons. Period. It's federal law, right? So why is that different than this conversation? I can understand people disagreeing with it. And to your point, I think a lot of people will be part of this dialogue moving forward, and they should, and we won't always agree, and that's okay. But I also think the idea that we can't have any kind of regulation that's not based in anything legal or in terms of policy.
Mhm.
So I
What's
think there's a lot that we can do. The courts, of course, are changing, and there's the recent Supreme Court ruling about New York's gun laws that, of course, we're mindful of. And I don't have any plans to spend my energy and time and my community's energy about passing something that is not going to pass constitutional muster. So we have to be mindful of that. I'm an attorney. It's kind of what we do normally as legislators, right? But the idea that we can't have different regulations and prohibit certain types of weapons, that doesn't reflect where we are today, let alone where we're going to move forward.
um, so there is a bill out there now on assault rifles that would realistically ban assault rifles. It would make it, you grandfather some things in that bill, the Aquino Hirschauer bill that's out there right now. Is that the starting point for the discussion? Is that part of the discussion at all as you guys start this working group? Would that bill pass today if a special session were called?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the items that we're talking about. What I'll be asking our members for, this is a working group. So the idea is we have a lot of different members of the working group with diverse backgrounds, geographic diversity, also different perspectives on this issue. So I'm not going to get ahead of what are we going to do, but I definitely think that is a bill and that's a topic that is going to be part of the conversation. But the idea behind the working group really is, there are 11 of us from diverse backgrounds that are encountering this gun violence in a lot of different ways. And I expect the conversation, the topics will be varied as well. And I won't get ahead of them, but I also, again, I think that 5522 that Representative Hirschauer has and a number of other bills that are already introduced will be part of the conversation, looking at where do we have consensus, where do we not, and what should we be doing about this?
The Armalite style rifles, these assault rifles, have been made for a long time. Prior to, I suppose you can say Columbine is the first, real time that this was made on a part of the national stage. Um, what changed? Because something had to change. Something had to tick this box, and I think that's why you hear conservatives talk about mental health and those sort of care, even though you see a lot of votes against it on that side too. Um, what, in your opinion, you hear everything. You hear video games, you hear broken families, you hear violent movies, whatever it might be. What is the tick up? Because it's not just the access, because they've been around for a long time.
Right. And the idea that you are a gun owner and therefore a criminal, of course, is ridiculous on its face. I don't think a lot of people, I think the vast majority of the country doesn't think that. So being a gun owner in and of itself just means you're a gun owner. You have any number of reasons for being a gun owner. The difference with an assault weapon ban or semi-automatic weapon in particular is millions and millions and millions more have been put into our communities. And it only takes one person, right? So had there been a handgun involved with the Highland Park shooting, I would have had fewer. I would still have more of my neighbors with me. And there's certainly a certain level. Sometimes it's, and every one of these criminals that commits these acts, they have their own motivations, their own challenges, their own reasons for doing it, and how they do it. But the goal is the same in every one of those instances, which is to kill as many people as possible.
Before we let you go, the state police did file an emergency rule to basically allow them to stop a kid like this person in Highland Park from getting a FOID card to access guns legally. Is that enough of a step in the right direction for you, or should any permanent rule or any sort of law along the lines of FOID be more specific?
I thought it was a good step. I think the Illinois State Police has been working on this issue for the last couple of years. Obviously, the General Assembly has been working on the FOID processes and applications for a while now, and quite intensely, and passing a number of laws that I think have made it a lot better, and getting rid of the backlog, and following up on what happened in Aurora, Illinois, where somebody had a FOID card revoked but didn't have the weapon returned or confiscated, right? So we identified things as we go. I thought the emergency rule made sense and was much more flexible to let the professionals like the state police make a decision in situations like this where there may be clear and present danger. And in that situation, someone shouldn't have a legal firearm. And so that, I think, was a good step forward. It certainly is not the only thing we're looking at doing. And I think this working group is going to be working with quite a bit of urgency. I'll be pushing them to do it urgently, but also I'm not really interested in half measures. My district won't stand for it. So
before we let you go, I want to, because a lot of my readers, obviously, half probably are conservative or pro-gun. Whether they're pro-gun control or not is, a different question. But there seems to be a sentiment among conservatives or Republicans that liberal, progressive, suburban Chicago politicians hate them and want to take away all their guns. You and I have only known each other a year or two now, but I know you well enough to know that you don't hate those people. So what's the message to people that you might disagree with as you go into this conversation? Because I get the sense that there's going to be those Democrats just want to take our guns sort of conversation, which I think you and I both know isn't the actual discussion here.
I work with a lot of people in the Illinois General Assembly that disagree with me, and sometimes disagree vehemently, and sometimes disagree with everything. But I work with them all the same, and I can learn from them, and they learn from me. And some of my closest relationships in the General Assembly are Republicans from different parts of the state, because frankly, I can learn more from them because I'm not necessarily surrounded by the issues and the constituent needs that I have here. I think moving forward, we will be moving forward with having conversations with a lot of people that disagree with me and that I disagree with. And that's the way it's supposed to work. But I also think at the same time, my message on this particular issue is that this 4th of July shooting would have and could have and can happen anywhere in the state, anywhere. And that, in some ways, I think is why so many people see what happened in Highland Park with perhaps a new lens, and not just the day-to-day numbness of gun violence. But this could have happened anywhere. This absolutely could have. And God forbid it happens again in one of their communities. And so what I'm hearing from people all over the state, Republicans included, are, we don't want this to happen here. We don't want our guns taken away, but we also don't want mass shootings. And that's the conversation we're going to be having.
Representative Bob Morgan, Democrat from Deerfield. Bob, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the frank conversation. Thanks for taking a few minutes with us today, and I'm sure we'll see you around and talk soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on. Great.
That's Representative Bob Morgan, a state representative from Lake County. He represents the Highland Park community that was directly impacted by the violence on July 4th. And I think our readers, our viewers, our listeners, etc., all the different outlets that we touch, may look at the gun issue differently. But I do appreciate, Bob having a good conversation with us and being willing to chat. So you can see this handsome guy that just popped up on the screen. His name is Rick Pearson. He is a great political reporter for the Chicago Tribune, my good friend. Rick, I know you hopped in for the end of Bob's comments there, and frankly, whether you agree with him or not, it's hard to argue with his interest in some action. Is an assault weapons ban the target for Democrats in the legislature right now, or do you think that they're going to maybe tone stuff down a little bit?
I think it's one thing about a goal, and that would be the goal. I don't think it's necessarily an achievable goal. And so that, yes, I would expect something to be toned down. But I mean, certainly.
Why isn't it achievable? Is it because, I mean, there aren't a ton of moderate Democrat votes out there anymore that could stop this?
No, but I still think that there's enough power and influence of the gun lobby that it becomes somewhat of a questionable vote for some of these Democrats. These are not, all in progressive Democrats. There are plenty of them, but I don't think it's enough to get over the goal line for what some of them would like for a complete assault weapons ban.
So I brought you on to talk politics a little bit, just because that's what we do.
This is very much a politics too.
Yeah, well, and it is part of politics too, because it will be part of the conversation. Abortion will be part of the conversation, even though if you get a sense of what Darren Bailey is doing now, he's starting to maybe understand that he can't talk like a Republican primary candidate in November, and he's avoiding some of the fights that don't help him, whether it's the Adam Kinzinger thing, whether it's the whether it's not taking Pritzker bait on abortion, or guns, or some of those things. Is from your perspective and from what you hear, is there a tone change within the Bailey campaign that makes it serious at this point?
Well, I think there's definitely a tone change, and we did see some of that yesterday in his non-responsiveness to questions involving Donald Trump, who endorsed him, about the activities of the January 6th committee and how some of his regional allies have called that a sham and a sham hearing, and about demanding about Kinzinger being censured by the state GOP, something the state GOP refused to do before. I think there's definite tonal change, although it was kind of interesting, the statement when his Eastern Bloc colleagues called for the censure of Kinzinger. The campaign issued a statement that basically didn't even talk about Kinzinger, but just talked about the need to unify the party. So then when he was asked about Kinzinger yesterday, he basically said, well, I'm opposed to everything he stands for, which is a sharp contrast of the messaging I think the campaign was trying to do. But there was kind of a forewarning of this kind of messaging shift in his almost daily Facebook postings, where he delivers a Bible reading, where he talked about urging voters not to get distracted by things, by national politics. And so I think there's definitely a shift here. The trouble is that after all he did to get the support of Donald Trump, and in essence bring national politics into the Illinois debate on the Republican side, you can't just walk away from this. And it will be a frequent question. And it, as Chris Mooney from the University of Illinois noted, those questions and the lack of response to them didn't do much for Richard Urban in a Republican primary, let alone what does it do in a general election with a broader audience.
Man, we could talk for days about the Urban campaign, but let's not do that. I think Darren Bailey is not the kind of Republican candidate that typically falls within the good graces of the Chicago media. They're a little combative, obviously, just generally, but add the bill to remove the rest of the state from Chicago, or Chicago from the rest of the state, or however they did that, and add the kind of Southern drawl that comes along with it. There was some punk columnist that made fun of his accent the other day, and whether in just the cultural side of things. So do you think that whether it's the Chicago media that drives the discussion, or voters themselves, is Bailey taken seriously, or is he just a hayseed with a drawl that ran on Trump's coattails?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but certainly I take him seriously. He is the Republican nominee for governor in the state of Illinois. Do I treat him any differently because he's from Southern Illinois? No. I mean, I spent a good part of my time in Central and Southern Illinois, and I appreciate the regional diversity that exists in this state. But I do take seriously a candidate who is running to be governor of the state of Illinois, and the same as a Democratic candidate for Illinois. And I don't treat him any differently than I did Bruce Rauner or anybody else. But there is, to me, an obligation, if you are running to be governor of the entire state of Illinois, that you have to speak to everybody in Illinois and speak to them about questions that they have. And so, no, I don't write anybody off. I mean, if the Trump election taught us one thing, it's you can't write anybody off.
That's for sure. Definitely, you can't write anybody off until the last minute, especially when we don't know what the economic situation is going to look like on Governor Pritzker's watch. He's kind of at 50 and a little under, 50, just a handful of points above underwater, or above water on his approval ratings.
Patrick, I want just to add, so many times, and I say this almost every election, so many times there are certain things that happen that are just beyond the governor's control. That some event happens, something of a terrible nature happens, and that can change the dynamics of the campaign.
And that's the old line that governors are replaceable too. That a president is easier or is harder to replace than a governor, because you can it just means less to you, et cetera. But are the Pritzker people? He's running around to New Hampshire. He's running around to Florida where he gets COVID, which is maybe the most ironic thing ever to happen in politics. Every time he's opened his mouth since election night, he's talking about abortion. He's talking about these super progressive ideas in a state that still isn't the most super progressive state in the nation. Is he taking this seriously, or do you think that that those who say that he's just focused way too much on the presidency are wrong?
I do think that their view of the Bailey challenge has basically allowed Pritzker to be able to go to these other states and to try to extend his reach, his influence, dip his toes in the water. I do think that if it was a much more, in their view, strenuous challenge from the Republican side, that would not even be part of their political thinking, that it would be a much more Illinois central focus. But yeah, I really think the way they view Bailey, we can go do these things and we're not going to feel any effect here at home.
So does he want to run for president, or is this just dipping toes in the water?
You ever met a politician who didn't think they could be president?
Or at least didn't want to be someday? Yeah.
Right.
But is it a serious, did he have aspirations for this, or is this just simply Biden's numbers are tanking, Harris ran a terrible campaign in 2020, and I can be the progressive, there's a lane for me, so so I should look at it. Is that what it is, or did he aspire to this?
At risk of sounding full of cliches in our conversation today, but timing is everything. And so when you look at things like the just in a matter of days, the issues of the court overturning Roe v. Wade, followed by the shootings in Highland Park, and his response to those cast him in a much more active light that a lot of Democrats support and do not find that they're getting from the Joe Biden White House. But that having been said, it's keep your name out there, get into places where people can see you, especially among the party faithful that's going to decide the future of the party. And did he always want to run for president? As one of the top Democratic donors in the country, I'm sure he always looked at that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Before we let you go, the Republican State Central Committee is picking or central committees from counties are picking their state central committee members tonight. The state Democratic Central Committee is picking their chair on Saturday. Democrats specifically, this is a higher profile one because this seems to be a proxy war between J.B. Pritzker and Senator Dick Durbin. So it's starting to look like people are coalescing around Lisa Hernandez a little bit more than anyone did behind Michelle Harris last time. So are the pieces starting to fall in place for Pritzker to win this one?
I'm not so sure. And part of the problem is it's done by that weighted vote. And we really don't even know yet what the apportionment of those weighted votes are. And we do know Pritzker allies did win some seats in the Democratic Central Committee, but he lost other seats. What you're seeing now, I would say a coalescing of support, but also a coalescing of Pritzker allies with the Illinois AFL-CIO, with other groups to push this. They're also pushing a structure that would make Hernandez the state chairman and have Robin Kelly as an appointed federal chairman because of those fundraising restrictions she's under. She said that was broached when she first took the office in March a year ago, and that the DNC chairman said each state only has one chair. So, there's also a lot of egos in this involved as well.
You mean to tell me there are egos in politics?
Now that's just a rumor. What do I know?
Does it matter in the end who runs a political party infrastructure?
Well, I think it's very inside baseball, except for the fact that for the Democratic Party, this is a party that's really gone under some massive change. And to her credit, Kelly has received, national kudos for modernizing a Democratic Party that for decades under Mike Madigan was merely another extension of his fundraising to elect House Democrats to keep him Speaker. He never cared about national politics before. Now the state is, obviously we've got looking at a convention for Chicago, perhaps, as well as moving up in the presidential calendar to become an early state. The state is much more involved with the DNC on a national level than it ever was under Mike Madigan, as well as, one of the things I remember talking to her was developing an email list. Under Madigan, the Democratic Party of Illinois did not have a email list to go to inform people.
Isn't that something in 2020?
That
there was no state infrastructure.
So none at all. So there is that argument that she has actually done a lot of work to bring that modernization to a party that was kind of a party organization that was calcified in the 1950s. But that having been said, it comes down to Pritzker's de facto head of the Democratic Party. Is he entitled to get his choice of person to run as chair? Is Kelly's being hamstrung by federal regulations so tough that the party can't raise money, and it is J.B. Pritzker who is basically the major funder of Democrats. But as I think Republicans have learned, you don't want to hit your star to you want to diversify your fundraising. You don't want to hit your star to one person, as they found in the post Bruce Rauner years.
Oh boy, didn't they? Before we let you go, Rick, thanks for all the time on Twitter at RAP30, I believe.
Yes.
What's the one thing that is important in November, whether it's a race, whether it's an issue, whether it's something what's something nobody's talking about that is incredibly important and we should be talking about?
The Supreme Court races, I think, are
I teed that up for you.
Well, I really think because of the fact of the redrawing of those boundaries, and given the long time and basically almost constitutionally established Democratic majority as a result of Cook County getting 3 of the 3 seats on the court. But yeah, I think the real attention that won't be focused on is going to be about the Supreme Court and the political destiny of that.
Yeah, and you've got 2, really huge races potentially. I think Republicans are less bullish on the 2nd district now that
I would
Mark
think,
Curran
I would think so as well.
Beat their golden boy and Dan Shaines, who I talked to Dan Shaines last year and thought he was a brilliant guy. And then there's the 3rd with Mike Burke and Mary Kay O'Brien, who is an incredibly well-liked political figure in that neck of the woods. So they're going to be expensive, brawling battles come November. I think you're absolutely right on that, Rick. So Rick Pearson from the Chicago Tribune, my friend, as always, thanks for the conversation.
Thank you, Patrick.
Great. That's our good friend Rick Pearson from the Chicago Tribune. A couple of comments that have come in. You're missing what this is about. Robin Kelly supported Dan Biss in the primary. The chairman of the state party would be a DNC voting member / superdelegate, and Pritzker wants to run for president. Well, it's not like Robin Kelly's not going to support a candidate from Illinois if she's still the chair. I mean, if J.B. Pritzker is still in contention or part of the conversation in 2024 that would make him somebody that could be a legitimate contender, then it would be silly for a chair Robin Kelly or a chair Lisa Hernandez or a chair anybody to not want to be part of that conversation and to be on board with a native son who is theoretically winning primaries and being a part of it. So thanks so much for watching. For those of you that jumped in today, I'd love to hear your comments. Drop us a note at mailbag@theillinoise.com. I want to hear your thoughts. See if you liked this. See if you want us to keep doing it. See if we can make it better. I'm trying new things. Some that have been tried in this political world before, and some that haven't. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop me a note anytime or your thoughts for the show. So we'll try it again next Wednesday, and look forward to having you there. Sign up for the newsletter at theillinoise.com. It's up in the top right corner. If you go to theillinoise.com and just click the free version, and you get our stuff on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And then paid subscribers, of course, get the special stuff on Wednesdays and Fridays. So thanks everyone for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for the conversation, and thanks to Bob Morgan. Thanks to Rick Pearson. Really do appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.